Welcome one, welcome all to the afternoon. This is the last afternoon of the General Assembly, and with that of Milano 2021. It's weird I still call it 2020. Could I get a raised hand from the proposing committee that is up next, which is Econ 2, once they are complete and in the conversation? I currently do not yet see a raised hand, but I'm sure it'll be there soon. Great, with that hand raised, it is time to start with the motion for a resolution by the Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs 2, which is tackling the question of Robin Hood, considering the increase of fortune of the world's richest, whilst other income levels stagnate. How should taxation systems in Europe be designed in order to reduce economic inequality and allow European countries to provide basic services to their population? I believe we have yet another lovely video prepared to give context to this question. May I ask the organizers to share this now? Is it just me, or is there currently nothing happening? For now, nothing is happening. I encourage everyone who has not learned the resolution by heart to now try and do so until the video comes on. I know it's a tough task, but it shouldn't be too taxing for all of you. Carl and Corinna, are you there?
Hi, yes, I am.
Do you believe that everyone earns what they deserve? Well, I guess you're not Robin Hood then. That's too bad, because we could really use that. Can you believe that for over 30 years the top 1% richest Europeans' average income has grown twice as fast as that of the bottom 50%? Stealing from the rich might not be the answer, but something has to be done.
Our aim was to decrease income inequality, but also economic inequality, because we found out that it has very negative effects, like, for example, on happiness.
We had to use the taxation system in order to achieve what Karim said, and use the forces of taxes and also government spending in order to mitigate and decrease the economic and income inequality that's evident.
We started with formulating the aim statement And then we went on to the cross clauses.
Prior to the session, we also did our own research in order to get a better understanding of the topic to help us. We were split into groups in order to look into different parts, but also come up with some problems that we would also see in this issue.
We had very interesting discussions with other committees about more controversial topics. We came very fast and very efficiently to a good solution. Because our topic is economic inequality, it was very complicated. We had only minor disagreements, but there were some about big data.
We were lucky enough to have a committee of mostly like-minded people. When we even had these problems, we managed to talk it through, decide on what we want to do, and the topic about inheritance and taxing based on your income were two things that we really discussed on, but we do believe we finally got to an acceptable solution for both of them, which the whole committee agreed with.
Thank you very much for offering this context piece. We shall move on to the proposing committee to deliver a 3-minute proposition speech. Econ 2, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Julia, and I'm going to do the proposition speech. So first of all, when you read our resolution, you can see that it's on taxes, and I know taxes, taxing, being taxed, and paying taxes are all very scary and hard to understand phrases, which is also what we have to deal with while doing this resolution. But even if you're underage and you don't pay your taxes yet, you can hear from your relatives, all the friends, that, you know, when the tax season comes, you have to find like a legal loophole to pay as little as possible, to avoid taxes if you have a company, to use tax havens. And in general, taxes are kind of being viewed as a burden. And that's a big problem. And we want to change the general role and the view in society on taxes. We want to see taxes rather than a burden, to be a collective effort by all the members of the society contributing adequately by the wealth and the income to the very important social causes such as public healthcare, public schooling, and public transit that don't really make profit because that's not the role of them, but they ensure social equality and that everyone has more or less the same access to important services. And it's important to keep in mind that our resolution focuses on not your family, the middle class, or even the upper middle class, but on the very ultra rich class, which makes up about 1% of a society, but holds so much wealth that even when I tried to find a number for how wealthy they are, I couldn't find it. And that just shows how, first of all, not transparent they are, but it also shows how difficult it is to measure wealth. However, we know that they hold a lot of wealth, and that wealth is not usually worked. It's passed on to generations through generations. So some people have never really experienced even being middle class. They've always been born into a very rich family. And these people don't really pay taxes as much as the lower classes do. And the problem is not that they're being wealthy, but that the lower classes haven't been getting much richer, and the upper classes, the very rich classes, have been getting richer. So the economic inequality has been growing, and the lower classes have been stagnating. And I know the comparison to Robin Hood may be a bit drastic, as we don't want to just steal from the rich, but we want to make sure that the rich contributes adequately to the taxes, because right now they don't really pay that much. And you may be wondering, why do we want to do that? Because wealth inequality and income inequality has many negative effects, as stated in the aims. And we just want to ensure that everyone has a fair chance in being a good citizen, in contributing to our society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We shall come to opposition speeches, which the first one of which will go to, do I see any raised hands? Yes, I see. Sede, you get the first 2 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you. While I commend the work that you have put into your resolution, and I'm on par with your obvious desire to reform current failing and unsustainable tax systems, I am unsure about how your aims were thought through, and I'm concerned that they may undermine an otherwise formidable resolution. Your aims refer to the European Youth Parliament decreasing the alarming wealth and income disparity by reshaping tax systems. However, I am alarmed by the statement as it insinuates an EU role in this. Having read your policy proposals, I am assured that this is not the actual case. But as Articles 110 to 113 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the EU dictate, that direct tax, denoting income tax, capital, etc., that competency falls with Member States, and the Member States alone. In the European Youth Parliament, it is our job to recommend, to advise, to research sustainable tax practices, but not to implement them or overstep. These limits can be seen in the Apple tax case, for example, where the EU took Ireland to the European Supreme Court over Ireland refusing to collect tax off Apple, and they lost. So that's the strong legal precedent that we are working against. Furthermore, I feel that your because clauses do not adequately provide for our current situation. The reference to COVID-19 emphasises strain on public finance, and I'm afraid this could be interpreted as a need for advising austerity measures as opposed to a golden opportunity to rebuild our economies with more sustainable taxation systems. Moreover, I am disappointed that your because clauses do not reference how sustainable tax systems should function in a sustainable way. A recent report by the World Economic Forum found that an economically sustainable tax system should minimize employment barriers to women and low-wage earners and stabilizing financial systems. Not only do your aims not recognize how disparities such as this can affect taxation systems, but they also do not emphasize the economic disparities between different member states and how this will affect how we cannot come up with a one-size-fits-all solution in these member states. In conclusion, I strongly believe that your change needs to happen, but I'm scared that, and some of your policy proposals will achieve this, but I'm scared that your aims may undermine this, as we cannot vote for aims we cannot vote for your policy proposals if we do not support your aims. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The second speech will come from the Committee on Civil Liberties. Liebe, you're recognized.
Thank you very much for the recognition, and thank you to Econ 2 for their hard work. You've tackled a very important issue for the future of Europe. However, your approach to the topic has made your resolution unrealistic. We have to keep in mind different factors when creating the resolution so that it can actually be effective. And by saying that economic inequality is a reason for unhappiness, and seeing any income other than labor as a threat to economic equality, you are overshadowing the actual problems of taxation systems. Your resolution also contradicts within itself, as you are limiting the collection of capital by your third, sixth, and eighth policy proposals when you are trying to support startups with your second proposal. Indeed, it should be pointed out that the establishment of new companies and innovation is only possible with investors, and therefore the collection of capital. Limiting the finance sector by additional taxes to the stock market and inheritance will only result in failure of their implementation. And when you haven't even proposed anything to secure our taxation systems that we have now, we cannot afford to add new non-functioning systems that will limit our economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this short and sweet speech. We will return to the proposing committee to answer questions around the member states usually being the one to collect taxes, potential of austerity measures being put in place with the suggestions, questions on how sustainable the taxation system proposed is, as well as the contradictions that some seem to see in the resolution, as well as how to secure the taxation that is there right now. Econ 2, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your points. For a topic like economic inequality, this is very
I'm
important.
sorry, Econ 2. There's a point of personal privilege. Please move closer to your microphone.
Yes, sorry. Thank you very much for your points. And for a topic like economic inequality, this is very important to have very different perspectives. And therefore, we are glad to hear so many points. But let's move on to the content. To see this speech, the EU should have more authority, like we said, but we don't want to interfere with the autonomy of member states. But the fact is, we are issuing for the first time common debt, and this must be paid somehow. And because cooperation is already needed to close tax havens, we can also strengthen strengthen institutions that are already here, like payments that you have to pay for CO2 emissions. To leave a speech, that economic inequality that causes unhappiness and very many social problems, that this undermines the whole proposal. I don't think so, because unhappiness is should be one of the biggest motors to do anything. If you think about what you're doing, if you think about what you're doing all the day is trying to stay happy, trying to be happier, and trying to be less unhappy. And that investors, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We will now open the floor to any committee who wants to know more about this resolution, in particular towards the aim or the... I would like the board chat to quiet down for a moment and not distract me with wrong information. It is up to the open floor now. And anyone who has questions about the aim or the context is free to ask away. And the first committee that I have on my list is the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy. You're recognized.
Thank you for recognition. I would like to ask why you decided not to include tax evasion as one of the causes of rising inequalities. Member states lose enormous amounts of money due to this problem, and it prevents the governments from tackling the problem of wealth distribution. I believe that without fixing this problem, we will never move forward, because money which is meant to improve our system actually exits through illegal channels. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Itrey. We will move on to a point from Reggie. You're recognized.
Thank you for recognizing me. I would like to bring attention to the fact that the committee has failed to address more problems concerning COVID-19. They have only stated that COVID-19 has put a strain on public finances. However, they failed to mention that because of COVID-19, certain companies had the chance to create more revenue than ever and extremely profited from this pandemic. Therefore, I think the aim should focus more on bringing companies and helping citizens out of this pandemic instead of taxing them even more. And I also therefore suggest maybe promote a corona-related tax so that these problems can be avoided and an economic recession can be avoided as well. I think that is at the moment more important than what you are aiming for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that Econ2 will respond to this severe claim. Next up on my list is Pesh. You're recognized. Wait. Before you start, there's a direct response by Cult.
Okay, thank you for recognition. I just wanted to add on that point on COVID-19. I think it's also important to consider not only the companies, but also the citizens who have really deepened, well, the inequalities have been deepened, especially when it comes to savings. And I would also encourage considering the savings of the richer and consider a tax around that, just to add on the point that was just stressed.
Thank you very much for adding on the COVID-related aspect. I see another direct response, this time from NB1. You're recognized.
I would like to add to the previous points, stating that I believe that the taxes addressed in this resolution will not affect the majority of individuals, as for example, capital gains tax. Sorry, was I not relevant?
I'm really sorry. The last point was about COVID-19 and companies having, or particular companies having increased profits, as well as then citizens facing a more severe backlash. So I believe your point is not a direct response. I would like to now proceed, pending any direct responses that I do not see. I would like to continue. I would like to continue with a direct response from Reggie. Reggie, are you sure that this is directly related to the impact that COVID-19 had on citizens and savings of these citizens?
Yeah.
You're recognized.
Well, it's with regard to the savings of the individuals, that taxation on equity is the most important taxation, as it's the difference in between the wealthy and the poor is mainly accelerated because the poor or the middle class do not have property. They generally take mortgages from banks, and then that's how they make money, but they aren't able to really involve themselves in speculative markets like housing and the stock market. So taxing the equity of the wealthy will then sort of lessen that disparity between the two groups. That's my suggestion.
Thank you very much. Now for real, I would like to proceed with Pesh. Are you there? If so, the floor is yours.
Thank you for recognizing me. Firstly, I want to commend this committee's work on such a pressing problem that is really one that we should tackle to ensure everyone has equal opportunities in the world in regards to economics and money. I'd like to draw attention to the first because clause. I'd like to suggest an amendment, as there is no mention of poverty in this clause of a negative outcome of economic inequality, and I believe that poverty and its related problems would be quite fitting to add to this because clause. Thank you.
Now that's one very efficient point and proposal in one. Last up for this round of debate, I would like to give a point to NV2. You're recognized.
Thank you for recognizing us. I want to thank the whole committee of NV2 for such resolution aim. Despite this, I have a concern regarding the aim itself. If you encourage all member states and its citizens, along with the companies, to contribute to creating a strong and good system, tell me if I'm wrong, but it unfortunately will not allow the government to offer equal access due to the fact that each actor mentioned in the aim has their own interest, and this thing will make the decision process complicated and even hard to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very lively first round of debate. There have been questions on tax evasion, on a deemed lack of a mention of poverty in the because clauses, as well as question about offering equal access, and then a very large point on COVID and its effects on citizens as well as companies. Is the proposing committee ready to respond? If so, you're recognized.
Thank you for recognizing me. Thank you for your points. Let's start with them. The first point was from ITRA, why not including tax evasions? We really had discussed this point and included mostly tax avoidance because it's legal. Tax evasions are illegal, and there are some authorities that are controlling this point, and basically this activity is illegal and there are fines for them. So what we can do, we can control or somehow tackle tax avoidance. The second very large point was about COVID-19, and what about COVID-19? It's not the only issue about tax system. We're trying to build the tax system that will be permanent for a long time and that will be effective and the spending will be effective. But now it is facing a lot of difficulties and the government's budgets are suffering because of COVID-19. And the tax system that we are proposing to build will somehow facilitate its further recovery. And one more issue, what about suggesting to us to include poverty? Thank you for that. The first because class was about social issues that somehow caused by taxes. And thank you for your suggestion. And the last one point was about...
Thank you very much. I hope you can respond to this point at a later stage. However, for now, I will move on to you again, Econ 2, in order for you to quickly offer us an introduction to your policy proposals. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you for the recognition, and I'd like to thank my fellow delegates for a very fruitful debate. Now, taxes. The word itself makes people's blood boil with anger, but my committee has decided that no longer will the people of the EU suffer at the hands of an unjust taxation system, which is why in our policy proposals, we have focused on decreasing income and wealth inequality between the rich and the poor by progressively taxing inheritance and capital income over labor income, because we recognize that in our current systems, that wealth is simply creating more wealth. We are determined to hold major corporations accountable for their poor tax habits by supporting a universal minimal corporation tax in a global attempt to reduce inequality and reduce the pressure currently placed on the middle and lower classes who bear the greatest burden. To help the citizens of the member states, we encourage a cultural shift and to begin to properly educate people on their finances and financial systems, while calling for transparency on where tax money is being used to ensure that our governments boost spending on vital public sectors. Simply put, our policy proposals ensure that people are no longer bound or restricted or restrained by their current economic environment and revolutionizes taxation systems to create a just and equal society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Econ 2, for this wealth of info. I'm sure that all other communities definitely depreciate it very much. We will now move on to the next round of open debate with a point from Cult.
Thank you for the recognition. My first comment, or rather question, would be what the committee means by happiness or unhappiness. How do they measure such happiness or unhappiness? My second point would be regarding OC6.
And that's where I need to stop you because points in the open debate are limited to 1 point per. So I hope that we can come back to you after still. We will take the next point from your sibling committee, Econ 1.
Thank you for the recognition. I'd like to say that, pointing your attention to clause number 6, I like the idea that rich individuals should be taxed more progressively than poor ones. However, I do not think that an inheritance tax, which by the way taxes capitals for a second time, would create much revenue for the state, because it is clear that rich people have most of their net worth invested into financial assets, real estate and equity, all of which are taxed already or non-taxed at all. What would stop these rich people from taking the money out of countries who implement such high taxes? That's what I want to ask to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, in order to have one lovely Econ trifecta here, we will take a point from Econ 3.
Thank you for the recognition. So in clause 8, you state that you urge member states to introduce transaction taxes for crypto. However, this not only means that you wish to regulate crypto, which is a complicated matter on its own, but are you aware that such action has already taken place in February 2021, where Bitcoin has classified as an asset similar to property by the IRS, and taxpayers must report Bitcoin transaction for tax purposes? So like this is already implemented. How are you planning to further contribute to this?
Well, I'm sure that Econ2 will not appreciate or depreciate that point too much. However, for now, we will move on to the last point of this round of open debate, which will be coming from NV1.
Thank you for the recognition. I have a question regarding Proposition 7C. How would the European Union implement decisions made by the Biden administrations, keep bearing in mind the fact that we, the European Union, are made of independent countries? Thank you.
Thank you very much, NV1. We shall move back to the proposing committee, who is facing a few tough questions on what constitutes happiness to them, how they are planning to deal with tax evasion, what they are planning to do differently about current transaction taxes already in place for cryptocurrencies, and how Sleepy Uncle Joe is going to play into all of this. You're recognized, Econ2.
Thank you for your points that were raised, and addressing the point raised by Colt, and what do we mean by unhappiness? This was carried out by World Health Organization, and there's an unhappiness index, and it stated that one of the reasons that contributed to unhappiness was economic inequality. Addressing the point raised by Econ 1 in clause 6, what we meant by implementing inheritance tax wasn't to get governments more money, but instead limiting the amount of possibilities and wealth one person could get through generations. Then addressing point raised by Econ 3, IRS is American, and so we're here in Europe, and that is, we don't really know how to address it. And addressing the point made by NV1 and 7C, we wanted to follow the example proposed by Biden's administration, because it was proposed at the meeting of G20, and it also addressed multinational companies, and some of them were European. Thank you for the floor.
Thank you very much. We shall proceed to the next round of open debate, opened with a point from the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy. ITRE, you are recognized.
Thank you for your recognition, and I commend the Committee on Solution and also creativity with their backgrounds. I would like to address the first point, which is urges member states to boost their spending on education and training and so on. I would like to clarify whether you mean in general or specifically improve the quality of teaching taxes, for example, because I feel like this point is a bit broad, so I would love if you clarify a bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this point. Next up, we will take a point from the Committee on Fisheries, who I do not have a pun for. You're still recognized.
Thank you for recognizing me. I have a question about Policy Proposal 2. I don't see how it reaches your aim statement or answers any because clause. Maybe I'm just getting it wrong. Could you elaborate on that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I unfortunately hope that we don't just have clarification points in this round, however, rather some concrete proposals as well. Maybe the next committee in line has one of these, which will be Econ 3. You're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. I have a question regarding OC number 6. How are you planning to implement the mentioned inheritance tax in member states that have untaxed inheritance as a human or constitutional right?
I also wish for there to be a human right on taxing inheritance, I think, if I had any inheritance to get. Let's hear from Cult what they have to say next. You're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. And I would like to also agree with my previous speaker's opinion, and would also like to add that the EU is an organization which is built on liberalism, where one's freedom to be able to decide where one's inheritance goes, at least I think, is fundamental to one's own civil liberties and property rights.
Thank you very much. I do not see. I was about to say I don't see a direct response. However, there is Libe coming in clutch. Libe, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. I also agree with the previous points made on the inheritance clause. In fact, it is also one of the fundamental things to build upon capital and actually have the resources to go on through generations. So thanks to having the liberalism in our countries to inherit our earnings, the next generations have the ability to invest in startups, which is another point of yours, and also go on doing their investments and contributing to innovation.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to see because Econ 2 might have wanted a direct response, but I think I'd rather just throw it back to them to conclude this round of open debate, and they have their direct response still for the next round if there's anything pressing coming up. Econ 2, you're recognized to respond to points about educational spending, a clarification in your because clauses, as well as inheritance tax implementation. You're recognized.
Okay, thank you for the floor, and thank you for your beautiful insight. Okay, I would like to start by the point made by each one. As for education, yeah, we would like to implement financial classes, but we want to spend and finance education overall in order to allow people to get the skills and to have access to higher wages and higher either income thanks to those skills. So no, we want to support all education. As for PESH, for the clause number 2, we want to support startup in order to allow people that come from less fortunate backgrounds to open up their own businesses, and those enter businesses and be allowed to have an income and start their own projects and their own companies. As for inheritance, we see this is a really controversial point. However, we are planning to tax in order to avoid generational passage of wealth, which leads to a classless society and thus doesn't allow people from lower incomes and lower classes to have access to equality and equal opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have to rob you of your word here. We will proceed to the last round of open debate, and I'm very happy to see so many hands/placards in the air. The first point will be taken from civil liberties. Liebe, you're recognized.
Thank you for being recognized. I have a point about policy proposal number 8. Are you planning to address the difficulties that member states may face when ensuring crypto tax compliance due to, for example, loss of access to transaction data or problems with the use of crypto tax software?
Like a swordfish cutting through the debate, Pesh has a direct response. Pesh, you're recognized.
Sorry, but I'm here right now. Thank you for the recognition. Adding to what the previous speaker just said about point 8, I also want to highlight how the committee sometimes miss that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies sometimes is a huge opportunity for poorer people to make it out of their livelihood. So please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this additional point on cryptocurrencies. Next, we shall take a point from, I see a direct response from the proposing committee. Econ 2, you're recognized.
We would like to thank you for also realizing that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies help the poor also gain some finances. And that's why we have financial lessons in the policy proposals in order to help them gain from this, but also those who are doing transactions of upwards of billions of dollars to actually pay their fair share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope that all those people make their transactions in euros and not in dollars, since most countries in the EU use the euro. Our next point will come from Sede. You're recognized.
Thanks for recognizing me. I would just like to draw your attention to proposal 7C. So an agreement on this was concluded with the Portuguese presidency of the council in February 2021. So maybe I would advise that you urge the parliament to implement it perhaps, because the fact that all the member states have finally agreed to it is a golden opportunity for us to maybe implement this. So that would be my proposal there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we will take a point from Reggie.
Thank you for the floor. I'd like to address the clause number 5. As actually, from my experience, the emission trading system, clause number 5. The emission trading system that you mentioned has many critical points and does not work very well. Probably should be redesigned. And so I think that it will not be pivotal for the EU budget. So I will think about rephrasing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We shall take a point from someone who also looked at economic and monetary affairs, namely Econ 1.
I would like to draw the attention on the clause number 5. I firmly believe that the clause number 5 will create a problem of bureaucracy in the European Union, a problem that plagues the Union for years, and also through bonds and loans, we are we kind of risk having the effects that we had during the recession of 2009 when the stock market crashed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for another point on clause number 5. There might be a direct response that I'm waiting to see. Yes, no, maybe. No, there's not a direct response. All right, then all hands in the air for the last point of this debate, which will come from NV2. You're recognized.
Thank you for recognizing us. So my question is regarding policy number 5. So we all know how much COVID affected us, and not only in economic, but also in myriad of sectors. And don't you think that these news sources are not that easy to find maybe? Or at least I would suggest giving examples on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this lovely round. I think the most taxing thing for the committee will be to respond to all of the issues and questions raised about policy proposal number 5. Are you ready to respond, Econ 2? You're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition and all the points raised. So basically, we want to close the gap by education and lowering taxes, because lower classes are usually less educated, which means it is harder for them to pursue a career that will bring them more money. That's why we cannot emphasize how important financing the education is. Then, about the pollution system, we need to regulate it somehow in order that it will actually work. It is already kind of implemented and it's actually working, but only if it's regulated, as I already said. And about the points on our proposing PP5, that bureaucracy is not avoidable in tax systems, sadly. And battling the COVID-19 pandemic, we need money to somehow push the recovering after the pandemic. And what the example is, basically, we need money. Without money, we will not recover. And basically, who the most will be affected are big firms. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this lovely little wrap up. I ask the proposing committee to convene in the virtual space on their own in order to discuss whether there's any amendments to be made. And I'm sure the rest of us will appreciate another short 5-minute music break sponsored and or brought to you by Ilya or someone else. I hear myself. Wow. Amendment break, 5 minutes. Is it just me or is there no music? There is still time for another round of this lovely music. The committee still has roughly 2 minutes left. Thank you very much for this lovely music and the great dances that we've seen. The proposing committee has decided to make a small amendment to their aim. You can see the new proposed text in the chat. There's a small addition at the end that says and reduce poverty. And I'm sure that in the next 3 minutes during their sum up speech, they'll gladly explain as to why. Econ 2, you're recognized.
Hi, everyone. Firstly, for our amendment, I wanted to talk about that. We wanted to have the poverty part because we believe that it was a great addition given by fellow delegate in another committee. Now to the sum up speech. Dear delegates, honorable chairs, and the vice president. I had prepared a speech in which I was planning on giving a few statistics and explaining what inequality is, but seeing that we're all a bit tired, I wanted it to be a bit more interactive. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and if your answer is yes, I want you to raise your hand on Teams. Firstly, are you connecting today to this session from home in which you would consider adequate shelter? If so, please raise your hand. Well, if you have raised your hand, you're automatically better off than 20% of the world's population. Secondly, did you eat lunch today during the break? This means that you're better off than 10% of the world's population. And lastly, are you joining this session through the internet? And this should be a yes for all of you, but there are 45% of the world that does not have access to the internet. Now, all of these three things are things we take for granted. And imagine living without these for a week. Well, for some people, this is their life norm. They live like this for their whole life, and that is what inequality is. And the same divide occurs once again. We have people who sleep hungry, people living from paycheck to paycheck, and people that have to hear their kids' stomach rumble whilst they kiss them a good night as they can't afford their dinner. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have people, the mega rich, who own yachts and private planes, who have private chefs to cook for their children, and whose food waste is more than the monthly intake of food that the lower class possibly have. And this inequality occurs right in front of us. It happens on the same earth and the same country. These people live miles away from each other. And to stop this, we need adequate taxation and government spending, so we can get the ultra mega rich to pay their fair share whilst helping those who really need it. We can get the same kids that slept hungry without adequate shelter, without electricity, to grow up get the deserved education, start their own business, and through the help of the government, and be in such a situation that now, once they kiss their children goodnight, they will know that those kids won't be sleeping hungry, as they will be in a financial situation where they'll get adequate food. So, I urge all of you to vote for this resolution in order to help those that really need it and allow everyone, every single person, to live the life that they're happy and proud in, to not have such divides, and to live in a world where everyone is free to live a joyous life without thinking about their next paycheck or if they will be able to eat a meal tonight. As John Dickinson said, together we stand, divided we fall. So please, vote for this resolution so we can work together in order to help everybody live the life they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this lovely concluding taxonomy of taxation reform. We will now proceed with voting. You have a minute to cast your vote on the now amended aim of this resolution. Please cast your votes now. I see 51, now 55 completions. Please make up your mind. There is 57 now. 58. Please cast your vote. 62. I think we're pretty much there. It is with great pleasure that I can say that the aim for the motion of a resolution has passed, and we will move on to the second vote now on the policy proposals, the concrete ones. The poll should pop up in a moment. The poll is there. Please cast your votes now. There are 56 completions. There should be a few more. 62 now. I think we're pretty much there. What do the results say? I think I'm not the only one wondering. And it is with pleasure that I can say the motion for a resolution by the Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs 2 has passed with 38 votes in favor, 21 against, and 5 abstentions. Thank you very much for this very lively debate that we also got done in time for once, which I'm very happy about. I'm not sure how long the break will be, so
But first, let's clap.
True, clapping is a good thing.
Thank you so much for this really, really interesting debate. So we're still going to take a 5-minute break before the very last debate of the day. So stretch your legs, and we're starting again at 3:34. When everyone is ready, please raise your hand. Excellent. So I see that everyone is ready. So we are going to kick off our very last debate of this GA. And before we begin, we just wanted to preface this debate with a content warning. As you may see from the topic sentence, it touches on sensitive topics related to mental health and contains mentions of cyberbullying, mental illness, and suicide. So people who may be harmed by such discussions, please approach the topic with care, take a break from the screen if necessary, and as has been shown throughout this GA, please stay respectful towards one another and considerate in your remarks. Black Mirror. Given the rise of mental health issues linked to the use of social media, which measures can be taken to ensure the safety and well-being of young people in Europe? So we're going to begin with a context video.
Loneliness, social exclusion, loss of jobs and loved ones. Fear of contagion. In the world rattled by a pandemic, there is something even more dangerous lurking underneath the surface. A new invisible threat sweeping out the population one by one. It's affecting their minds, controlling their behavior. Nobody is safe under its influence, especially someone from Generation Z.
My committee and I decided to take this very broad perspective. You can see later on in the resolution that we have tried to include aspects of the lack of education about mental health, the lack of accessibility to high quality mental health care, as well as cybersecurity, and how social media companies profit off of our attention. Our committee work was quite challenging because, as I mentioned, the topic that we were dealing with was quite broad, and we had to make sure that we included as many aspects of the problems as we could. The most challenging part was coming up with the actual solutions. The main issue that comes to mind when asked about this question is the topic of addiction and being addicted to social media. We had extremely long and complicated debates about this topic, and we also realized that the word addiction can be quite complicated. The expert that came in the last day of committee work mainly emphasized that there is a very big difference between actual addiction and just high usage of social media. Since addiction is an actual medical diagnosis, we really had to emphasize that this term was used correctly and that everybody understood it clearly.
Thank you very much. So is the proposing committee ready to share their posts, or rather their aim? NV1, you're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. I hope you can all hear me well. Dear Madam President, honorable members of the board, distinguished guests, and fellow delegates. My name is Michaela Nguyenova, and it is truly an honor to deliver the very last proposition speech of the Milano ISS General Assembly. Throughout the past few days, my committee and I have been working tirelessly in order to tackle the problem of how social media can negatively affect our mental health and how easily it induces both episodic and long-term mental illnesses. With the unprecedented development of the pandemic and its unforeseen circumstances, every single one of us has experienced a colossal decline in their mental well-being, which was strongly influenced by physical isolation and even further exacerbated by our dependency on online interaction. The NV1 committee believes that the problem must be approached from a broad perspective, aiming at aspects ranging from education and destigmatization through cybersecurity and privacy to accessibility and funding of professional mental health care. A number of statistics has proven the alarmingly increasing correlation between suicide rates and untreated mental illnesses due to the lack of proper care. As a consequence of the prevalent social stigma about mental illnesses and the low accessibility of efficient care, more often than not, the affected individual is afraid to reach out for help for fear that they get misunderstood, degraded, or even humiliated. Furthermore, our committee also steered our attention towards the issue of lack of education, which only worsens the already mentioned stigmatization, romanticization, and misleading medical terminology use. Likewise, NV1 also focused on the fact that social media is not the problem itself. It is its extreme high usage which affects the person in numerous aspects, the unrealistic image of life it perpetuates, and the platform it creates for cyberbullying. There is a saying that if a flower does not grow the way it should, you change its surroundings, not the flower itself. I believe that we could apply this analogy to the environment as well, to the online environment as well, meaning that since we all spend hours on end connected to our social media accounts, why not change this environment and shift it towards more inclusive, welcoming, safe, and non-judgmental place where we can all grow and bloom. In our hectic and stressful lives, we tend to forget that the main threat to our mental stability is the constant subconscious judgment in our minds fostered by our high social media usage. We never really step back and give much thought to how this can be changed, and for this very reason, I strongly encourage you to vote in favor of our resolution in order for our dream of blossoming social media to come to life. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this wonderful defense speech. And so we will now move on to see if there are any reactions from any of the other committees. And the first committee recognized for an opposition speech is CULT. You have 2 minutes. CULT, you're recognized.
Okay, so thank you for the great speech and the great proposition. Yet I am a bit concerned with your goals with this. You have in your because clauses and in your OCs talked about wanting to target fake news and target what people post about their perfect lives. Yet, doesn't this infringe on the right to speech, the right to express yourself? Like, you cannot control what people post on the internet, as that would be a basic violation of the freedom of speech, which we very proudly have here in the European Union and in the liberal democracies of the West. Plus, why do you even target these things like fake news and echo chambers? Aren't they incredibly disconnected from the issue with mental health and seems to be more targeted towards wanting to infringe on rights, to go on a crusade against these posts, which you really can't. That shouldn't be what the mental health section is about. Also, how you're painting social media is as an absolute evil, as a problematic catalyst for a lot of mental health issues. But this completely ignores the positive of social media. Social media is able to connect people, especially in pandemic times, which has greatly helped some people. And sure, social media might accentuate problems,
Please conclude.
but it mostly accentuates issues from this social aspect of the world. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and thank you for hearing my speech.
Thank you very much for this opposition speech, which focused on how fake news is relevant to mental health when regarding social media, and also how you will ensure that your proposals or that your aim and that your resolution will not infringe on free speech, as well as highlighting the positive aspects of social media. For the second opposition speech, we will go to NV2. You're recognized.
NV2, we cannot hear you. We only hear white noise.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Okay, my bad. Thank you for your recognition. And first of all, I want to congratulate our sibling committee for their great resolution aim. However, there are a few things that make it incomplete or less possible to achieve. Digital world is a place which unfortunately cannot be fully protected, since there are a myriad of hacking systems / programs, people behind their computer screens who are against mental well-being and make it an unhealthy place to work in. Also, for the past few months, it was unable to count how many digital security laws were broken and how many attempts of cybercrime or cyberbullying occurred. Nevertheless, I'm also curious if this aim is focused on long-term or short-term changes and implementations in order to clarify the aim itself. Now I'll be moving on to the social media and raising awareness part. All of this should be welcomed as it removes the stigma around mental health and encourages people who are suffering in silence to seek help. However, the awareness movement is not without its pitfalls. It's sometimes co-opted by people to advance their own agenda, such as increasing a fan base or grabbing media attention. While it's clearly a good thing that people are no longer suffering in silence, mental health services do not have the resources to help people who make contact with them. What's the point in encouraging people to be open about mental health and seek support if that support is not available? And this has been proven by various studies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very well-timed opposition speech, and in particular because it touched upon new points. So here there was in particular the reference to digital security and cybercrime, as well as a question on whether you could clarify if you're focusing on short or long-term measures. NV1, it is now up to you to respond to these attack speeches. You have the same amount of time as a TikTok video, which is 1 minute. So NV1, you're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. Dear President, honorable members of the board, distinguished guests, and fellow delegates, thank you for the comprehensive speeches. It's easily seen that you have been researching our topic. However, regarding to our goals, we aim to establish a world that's healthier for the next generation. We have to take care of our health and our mental health, especially when we are close in that pandemic. Fake news and that perfect life delusion are problems that we are not tackling throughout limiting the freedom of speech, but we are helping people not fall into that circle of only one-side news, and that is relevant because especially when we are closed in the pandemic, as I said before, the things that we see on our feed are the things that we most interact with, therefore that we start believing. So fact-checking will make sure that people are still living in their world and not losing connection with the real life. Social media is not only a bad thing. There are many benefits, and the fact that we are here and we are connecting and talking with our friends are only a few of them. But we can only be one-sided. So we have to tackle as a problem the negative sides of it. So our resolution is not against the benefits, but it's against the problems. So people that are making social media dangerous, we are mostly concerned about this and in our solution, and we have tackled that with suggestions in our, for example, with TikTok, and we are aiming to conclude with long-term changes. So we are.
Thank you very much. You'll have a final chance to respond to these points after this first round of open debate. So thank you very much for clarifying your aim and for responding to all of these points brought up in the opposition speech. We're now going to kick off the first round of open debate that focuses on the aim and the because clauses of this resolution. So we're kicking off with a point from Reggie. You're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. Firstly, I would like to thank the NV1 committee for taking care of such an important issue, especially now, during the pandemic, when the only way of staying in touch with our friends is via technology and social media. However, I notice with regret that your aims focus mostly on adapting to the present situation rather than trying to mitigate its roots. It's impossible to deal with an issue thoroughly when focusing mainly on the results and not the source. I lack a strong voice and actions which would tackle this problem from the core. So can you explain how you want, if and how you want to tackle this problem from this aspect? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your point. And now we are swiping right to Itre. You're recognized.
Thank you for recognizing me, and also thank you to the committee for this beautiful resolution that tackled the mental health issue that is particularly important to or for the European youth. And although I agree that destigmatizing is of utmost importance, I would like to also point out that many victims do not acknowledge their experience as harassment or as crime. Which applies especially to young girls, resulting in more than 18% who do not report their experience and an incident. So I would like to ask how you would like to tackle this threat in the short term and not in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this point, and we'll continue swiping to Econ 3. You're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. So you mentioned your because clauses that 71% of teenagers are constantly using their smartphones, illustrating the addictive behavior, which I must admit I do find myself guilty to this bad habit without even realizing it. Even though as a committee you are aware of this sad reality, your political statement nowhere refers as tackling the issue of addiction as a main aim of your resolution. May I ask why not?
Thank you for this point. And the very last point of this first round of open debates on the aims of the resolution, as I do not believe we have any direct responses, will come from Pesh. You're recognized.
Thank you for recognition. So I have a point about your aim statement, especially the part where you said that you'd like to spread awareness about the accessibility of professional treatment. So I'd like to know if you've taken into consideration that there might be countries and or situation, such as but not limited to the pandemic, where or when professional treatment is not as accessible as it should be, since many psychologist clinics were closed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this wealth of comments on the aims and the because clauses of this resolution. So we had a lot of very varied comments that went from clarifying why addiction was not included in the aim of the resolution, also on how you would like to attack the source of the issue and not just the effects of it, also on the accessibility of mental treatment, of treatment for mental health, and finally, how you're addressing harassment and whether people are not reporting enough their experiences. So NV1, you are recognized to respond to this first round of open debate.
Hello, everyone. I would like to thank you for your points. First, Reggie's point, because I personally disagree that this resolution deals only with the results of mental health issues, as I believe we also tackle this problem at its root as well. For example, with education against mental health issues that could actually prevent them in the first place. Then I would like to address Itra's point, as yes, we do partially try to address this issue you have stated, as for example, we do implement school counselors that can potentially detect mental illnesses for people that may be too shy to report them, as you have previously said. And then addressing Econ 3's point, I do indeed agree that perhaps addiction could have a larger role in our aim statement, and we will consider putting in our amendments. And then finally, I do believe that, okay, although COVID-19 is a big issue, that we do promote measures that can be valid during a pandemic like this, such as fostering research on mental health and promoting helplines. Thank you very much for all of your points.
Perfect. Thank you very much for this very well-timed response. So now that we've wrapped up this first discussion on the aim and the because clauses, we're moving on to the policy proposals. So would the proposing committee like to present their main policy proposals? NV1, you're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. Madam President, Honourable Board, fellow delegates and esteemed guests, it is my greatest pleasure to introduce to you the NV1 policy proposals. Our solutions may be broken down into 3 core values, all of which interlink and cannot be viewed in solitude. The first is our focus on transparency. We all know that 40-page long contract that we have to accept whenever we download an app. It's daunting, so we have proposed a single summary page to be shown to the user first so that they're aware of what they're agreeing to. To combat the potentially harmful effects of filter bubbles and misinformation online, we suggest introducing a notification which marks posts related to controversial matters to remind the user that it may not be entirely accurate or that they are only seeing one side of the story. We also suggest that platforms introduce a hate speech identification where the user is given a warning about its harmful effect before they can post it, to promote self-accountability, education, and make the perpetrator question their own actions. The next core value of ours is education, which we have identified as an intergenerational problem. We propose an adjustment to national curriculums to include ways to look after yourself and others, as well as teach young people the correct, medically informed way to discuss mental illness, as well as a social media campaign to make users more conscious of the so-called perfect life illusion that exists online, where we see an endless highlight reel. Now we come to our final core matter, which is the inaccessibility of mental health care. Some of our proposals may be considered simple, but it cannot be argued that they are vital. Increased national spending on mental health care services, supporting volunteer-led helplines, promoting the work of NGOs to reach and inform a wider audience. The impact of this work is unimaginable. And finally, we propose more detailed EU-wide research to identify the needs of the public today to protect them for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much for summarizing in the perfect way your policy proposals and in grouping them in that way to make them more digestible for everyone. And so for the second round of open debate, so the first round focusing on the policy proposals, we're going to kick it off with Colt, you're recognized.
Thank you so much for the recognition. I appreciate in your resolution there's a great focus on the victims of this and how to protect them. But what about the perpetrators? And how will you tackle the root of hate speech and the people who are actually giving out this hate speech? Because there are already a lot of filter systems in place on social media such as Instagram, which identify the majority of hate speech and block it. But the perpetrators seem to get off easy. And would you consider any consequences for those who actually use bad language and promote misinformation and hold them accountable some way, like you would normally with hate speech in person, to ensure the safety of and well-being of young people on the internet? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your points. You seem to be receiving a lot of direct messages on your resolution, and we will now move on to security and defense. You're recognized.
Thank you for recognition, Madam President. I would like, first of all, to congratulate the proposing committee for a lovely resolution. I would just like to ask about OC number 2. Who or what will fact check what you're proposing and what will be the criteria for it? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this point of clarification on OC number 2. So we are following with a point from Econ 1. You're recognized. Excuse me, since you did not speak yet, it appears that we have a direct response, or in this debate we can call them maybe a direct message that is coming from the Committee on Regional Development. So Econ 1 will get to you right after this, but first we're going to take a point from Regional Development. You're recognized.
Thank you so
Econ 1,
much.
if you could please, Regional Development.
I wanted to save and share your very well-written resolution. However, I would also like to comment on something. I find that especially the second clause, but also other clauses here in the resolution, leave to the social media companies the task to decide what is true and what is not, and what is a hate speech and what is not. So given the huge role that these very few corporate actors play already, and their despicable tendency to favor their interests over the democratic process, don't you think that actually this responsibility could be put on the shoulders of some other actors who actually have the public good as their own priority? Thank you.
So thank you very much for this point where you proposed your own response to the previous question posed by Sede on who is responsible for flagging these posts and correcting or flagging what is factually incorrect. So according to the point from Reggie, it would be perhaps a bit dangerous to only leave it to the platform. So we look forward to the response from the proposing committee on who would be responsible for that and who would bear that responsibility. And we have another direct response. Okay, so we have Econ 2 sliding into the conversation. Econ 2, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask the question built upon the previous question on, first of all, which platform regulates this speech, but also which type of speech is directly being regulated for. As we know, quote unquote, hate speech needs to be defined first in order to be censored, because we don't want to accidentally censor those people that maybe even be affected, maybe even be speaking about it, for it is a double-edged sword. We need to be incredibly careful with it in order not to hurt the victims. Well, we might hurt them, but not to hurt ourselves in the process and the people we hold dearest the most. Thank you.
Thank you very much for adding yet another point in this conversation. So it appears we do not have any further direct responses, and we do. So it is again about clause number 2, what platforms are, how we manage with factually incorrect information on platforms. Okay, so NV2, you're recognized.
Thank you. Referring to the last point made, indeed, who will be responsible for these platforms is a question. However, when we talk about content, I would like to remind everyone that this is not a topic about hate speech per se, However, when we are dealing with harmful material online and we see people flagging that and reporting it, chances are that there is a reason they're doing that. There is no campaigning going on between reporting stuff. So whenever somebody feels uncomfortable with material posted online, maybe the question shouldn't be who is going to deal with managing this and who's going to monitor that this is indeed harmful, but why are people doing this? There must be a reason behind it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I believe this was not exactly a direct response, as you were talking more about hate speech, which is addressed in clause number 4, whereas in clause number 2, it speaks more about factually correct information or falsely contextualized information. So I just wanted to make this clarification. We still appreciate your point in your debate. And so we're going to wrap up the second round of debate that had a lot of different points with all direct. And do we have another direct response? Okay. But now the direct response has to be, because the last point that was made was on hate speech. So the direct response has to be about hate speech, not about the platforms and incorrect information. E-Trade, do you confirm that you would like to take this direct response? Then I guess so. So E-Trade, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you so much for your recognition. And yeah, I would like to commend the committee on their resolution and the efforts they put in. And yeah, about the to kind of build on the previous committees, I would like to emphasize that even though hate speech is obviously worth to be removed from all the platforms, it is quite difficult to support social media because the current algorithms that they use are quite insufficient, and often there are cases of users getting blocked or flagged even though they do not have any offensive posts or information on their accounts. So would you like to maybe apply the EU regulations to those social medias, and how would you do that since they're US based? So there are obviously more difficulties. So maybe you could a bit clarify on that point, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And it is indeed very topical to receive a point on algorithms from a delegate from E-Tray who is dealing with artificial intelligence. So we're wrapping up the second round of open debate with two main topics, which were both linked to the accuracy of information found on social media. Oh, well, actually, we're not wrapping up quite yet because we still have a direct response from SEDE. Is it talking about hate speech and whether who is being blocked on social media? So Sede, you're recognized, and then we won't be taking any more direct responses, and we will be going back to the proposing committee. So Sede, you're recognized.
I think thank you for recognizing me. Can I just confirm the last thing he said was about how the companies are in America, so they can't be regulated? Yeah, that was the last thing. Just that all these companies have EU headquarters and that portion has to go through the EU, and that's like, for example, like Google, Apple, Facebook, they all have headquarters in EU countries. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this clarification. I am sure that the committee NV1 appreciates this. So as you can all see, this is a topic that that we all realize is very, very relevant, and a lot of points as well from the first round of debate have pointed out to how important this topic is. And as we can see as well from the big involvement from direct responses. So wrapping up again, the second round of open debate, it was mostly about the accuracy of information, how you will ensure who will be responsible for monitoring this, how do you balance this with free speech, and how do you ensure implementation, knowing that although these companies have EU headquarters, as was mentioned just now, they are still US companies. So how will you ensure that that they will be following the regulations or whatever rules you wish that they should? NV1, you're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. I'll do my best to cover everything that was brought to our attention. Firstly, I'd like to start off by a point about perpetrators and the fact that we mostly focus about the victims and the affected parties. And I'd like to say that the affected parties are the most important ones because they are the ones who are the victims, and we want to make sure we want to ensure their safety. On top of that, we want the perpetrators to pay the consequences. We want their content to be flagged. We want them to pay for it. And on top of that, we also encourage people who experience, for example, hate speech to take legal action because they can do that since hate speech is illegal. On top of that, I'd like to talk about hate speech, which is which we think should be flagged. There is, of course, should be explanation about hate speech, and we do think so. But we think that hate speech could be quite self-explanatory, where hate speech has been explained by a lot of the EU bodies a lot of the times, where it is quite clear. With one single Google search, you can find it. And when it comes to pop-up notifications about hate speech, we think that they should come with slurs, for example. I'd like to mention about fact-checking as well. We think that there are some EU bodies who are responsible for fact-checking, and we think that they should be more active, and we encourage them to make sure that every single information that is put on social media is fact-checked, in order to make sure that everyone has the correct information.
Please conclude.
Okay, to make sure that everyone has valid information, and to make sure that everyone who's spreading information has the resources to back it up. And lastly,
thank you very much. You'll be able to respond to the following comments in your following rounds. So we're next going to the third round of open debate that will be opened by Colt. You're recognized.
Thank you so much for the recognition and for the committee to respond to the previous questions. We had a question about OC number 6, and if you could evaluate more about how you recommend member states and the European Defence Agency can ensure safety in the cyberspace environment, how you will do this, or how they will do this.
Thank you very much for bringing up a new point in this debate about OC number 6 and cyber safety in the cyberspace. We are now moving on to ITRE. You're recognized. ITRE, we cannot hear you yet. Does a delegate from ITRE still like to speak?
I am sorry. I am afraid that the point I'm trying to make is meant for the fourth round of the speech.
Okay, then no worries. We will take a point from another committee, and then we'll recognize you again in the fourth round. So we're now moving on. We're now moving on, sliding to Econ 3. You're recognized.
Okay, thanks for the recognition, dear committee. Your points are all deep enough and real, but all points of your policy proposal are recommendation to member countries, government agencies, social networks, and their corporations. But why do we not pay any attention to the primary subjects of this problem, to users who are both the source of the problem and its recipients? I invite the committee to broaden the scope of its vision of this issue and to clarify this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we're taking a point from NV2. You're recognized.
Thank you. I noticed, or actually, I'd like to start by saying that I think it's a really good resolution. I think it's really comprehensive and it covers almost everything that I could think of. But I would like to add that in your because clauses in your aim, you mentioned that social medias use targeted ads and filtering, and they promote addictive behavior through their design. And I would have liked to see a resolution that really focused on that issue, but unfortunately that's not there. Thank you very much.
Okay, and the final point of this first round of debate will go to Security and Defense. You're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. In your previous response, dear committee, you said that there is already a law against hate speech. However, from the search I have done, from what I know, that law is currently being talked about. It is not passed yet, and to an extent, the freedom of speech does protect hate speech as well. I'm saying to an extent, of course, but whether you could clarify which law you meant when you said that there is already a law against hate speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So in this third round of debate, we had yet more points tackling yet more clauses. In particular, the committees would like to hear more about how you will ensure safety in the cyberspace. which part of your proposals are tackling users who can be considered in some cases as well as partially source of the problem, and not only the ones who are suffering from this issue. Also, what you are doing to address addictive behavior, and finally, what your measures are regarding the law against hate speech. So, NV1, you are recognized.
Okay, thank you everyone for your very kind points. And I will start with the problem with addiction. Actually, our whole resolution is tackling this issue, but okay, it's side effects, because it is something that the individual choose, is an individual attitude. So we are trying to tackle this with education about digital usage, and also fostering research about addiction, and also about cybersecurity. I think that the clause it's self-explanatory, as the European Defense Act has a whole own strategy. So if you wanted to know more about how it will be implemented, you can just make a research. And also about the users, I think that our resolution is widely focused about the users and their well-being, as we are trying to provide them in every way, in every possible way, the best mental health care and the most healthy environment on the internet. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for this timely response to the points of the third round of debate. So we are now moving on to the very last round of open debate of the very last debate of this General Assembly. So keep your points constructive as they have been so far. And we're going to start with Econ 1. You're recognized.
Thank you so much for the recognition. I would firstly like to preface my point with a trigger warning. And firstly, I would like to thank the NV1 committee for tackling this sensitive topic so bravely. But I'm extremely concerned that in your because clauses, you have not addressed the growing number of extremely toxic communities on Reddit, Facebook, and TikTok especially, that encourage harmful behaviors, such as, for example, self-harm, binge eating, and suicide. And not only harmful behaviors, but also romanticized and glorified mental illnesses, such as anxiety, depression, and anger issues. And I would also like to highlight concerning trends, such as hashtag Teenspiration and similar concerning hashtags. What will you do to protect these vulnerable and impressionable young minds from communities such as these that present these toxic traits in a positive way?
Thank you so much for your point. And NV1 has a direct response to this point. So NV1, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you. I first want to thank, I believe it was Econ 1 for their point. And if I may draw your attention to our because clauses, I agree that we did not outrightly state that it was due to online communities causing these issues. However, in our second because clause, we have mentioned the concept of filter bubbles, which I believe to be a similar concept in that people are surrounded by the sort of beliefs that they interact or agree with. And I believe that is basically the foundation of such harmful communities that the committee brought our attention to. And furthermore, we continue on with that same because clause in saying that this really contributes to the radicalization and polarization of beliefs. I hope I've answered the committee's concerns there, in that I agree we did not outright state that we are targeting these communities, but more so the harmful impacts that they can have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think this clarifies this issue. So we will continue with a point from Itre. So Itre, it is now back to you for this fourth round of debate.
Yes, thank you for the recognition. I had some technical issues. My question is regarding OC number 2, once again. I would like you to elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by flagging posts, and is this proposal somehow similar to the already implemented approach of warning users of false information as in Instagram? And if not, is this approach insufficient and what should be changed? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are going to continue with a point from Pesh. You're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. I would like to ask something about OC number 3. Adding links for people to fact check stated information is of course a good thing to do and a great way to prevent false information from spreading. However, I think internet security hasn't been thought through very well when coming up with this OC, since adding this option creates the opportunity for phishers and other cyber attackers to leave fake and harmful links available for an indefinite amount of people to click on, subjecting them to potential computer infections and or theft of their personal and sensitive information. This, of course, brings us back to the cybersecurity debate, but I do think it is worth mentioning and thinking over, especially since we have seen the huge upward trend in cybercrime during the pandemic as people have become more reliant on social media. Thank you.
Thank you very much for linking OC3, LinkedIn OC3 with the OC on cybersecurity policy proposal. Please pardon my antiquated language. So next we are going to Econ 2. You're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you. I got a question for OC number 13 with regards to the media portraying this idealistic lifestyle and thereby it could be argued that it thereby causes some depression. How should this be prevented? Because in your OC, you didn't give any proposition on how it should be prevented or be taken care of. Are you going to be taken care of via legislation? Or what other methods are you thinking about, or what other have you come up with? Because this, for me, would be very interesting.
Thank you very much. And the very, very last point of this GA will come from, actually, before that, we have a direct response from Pesh. You're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. I just want to add to the clause number 13 that it seems very paradoxical that you propose to warn of the dangers of social media using social media itself. I mean, I don't have a proposal for you to change it, but I just think it seems very ridiculous. Thank you.
Okay, and so now, as promised, the very, very, very last point of this open debate will come from Libe. You're recognized.
Thank you. I agree with my fellow delegate that this is not the best option, because also on social media, only having these information campaigns can also not include the surroundings of the youth, especially the older generations who are vital to the support of these youth, because sometimes the youth cannot see the mental health condition themselves. Thank you.
So thank you all for your points, showing again how much this is a relevant issue that a lot of us feel very concerned by. So we're going to go back to the proposing committee to respond to this final round of open debate. Speaking in particular, well, we already had a discussion about the communities encouraging harmful behavior, and this was already addressed by the proposing committee. So then there was another question about OC2 and the flagging. Finally, a question about how including sources could potentially open the risk for further cyber risks, and then several questions regarding the policy proposal number 13, in particular, what will be in these educational campaigns, how you will ensure that the appropriate people will receive them, and how you will address these perfect life illusions. So NV1, you are recognized.
Thank you so much for your responses. So I'm going to start from the proposal number 2. So you needed more clarification on this, and I'm happy to announce that the main thing that we are going to make this project into reality is through controversial keywords. So the idea here lies in the fact that social media is going to be the company who is going to report those fake posts by detecting some keywords. And actually, the second response that I got, I can link it with my previous answer, since we are afraid of the fake links, that they might not include cyber safety. However, we are encouraging people to have, encouraging social media to add flag posts, which will kind of solve that problem. Concerning the other response with the proposal number 13, I would say that we are encouraging to have some campaigns which are going to educate people on how social media, how fake social media can be. And the point here lies within the fact that people most of the time don't really realize that whatever is posted on social media is not real. So we are encouraging to have to cooperate with activists who have a huge platform to educate them that things like this don't really correspond to reality.
Thank you very much. You will be able to address all the rest in your summation speech. So thank you so much for responding to this final round of debate. And we will now take a 5-minute amendment break. So the committee NV1 will leave us for 5 minutes, and we will just be hanging out here, listening to wonderful music. I really encourage you to read through the resolution again and already think about how you would like to vote on the aims and on the policy proposals, while of course keeping your mind open to listening to their summation speech. So wonderful. Thanks for the music.
Danny Dance.
So I believe the proposing committee is back. Excellent. So NV1, you are recognized to deliver your summation speech. And I believe we have no amendments.
Thank you for the recognition, Madam President, Honorable Board, distinguished guests, and fellow delegates. Even though we don't have any amendment, we would like to make two things clear. A lot of people have complained about addiction. Complaint is a harsh word. A lot of people had a problem with that we did not solve addiction. However, coming from the words of an expert, addiction is a very specific thing. It's a behavior problem. It's a case-by-case solution. We cannot add a solution for addiction. Second of all, when it's concerned to cybersecurity, I am fully aware of this. As a computer science student myself, I am fully aware of that and where are you coming from. However, my committee's topic is about the addiction, social media and mental health. There is nothing covered with cybersecurity. With that, I would like to start my summation speech. As much as I would love to talk for the next couple of minutes about how the design of social media itself and the technical aspects are the reasons we are discussing the topic at such an event. However, I'm not going to bore you with such details. What I'm going to do instead is tell you the story of Amanda. Amanda was in the 7th grade when she was approached online by a stranger man. The stranger had convinced Amanda to flash her breast on the webcam. What Amanda didn't know back then is that the stranger took a picture of her breast. No longer after that, the man started threatening Amanda of exposing her picture if she did not participate in a live sex act on camera. Amanda was more than strong enough to refuse, and the man was monstrous enough to share the photo. Even more, he made sure that Amanda's contacts would see it as well. This single post was more than enough to ruin the life of a young girl who was being cyberbullied ever since that picture. Her moving to another city was not enough reason for the cyberbullying to stop, and nor her first failed attempt at suicide. Sadly, however, Amanda's second attempt was successful. I am fully aware that our committee had covered many problems regarding social media. However, I am emphasizing cyberbullying as Amanda's story is not a unique one. Every day, a large number of social media users are being cyberbullied with insufficient actions by the responsible bodies. I believe that everyone in here today had experienced one, if not multiple, of issues my committee had raised. And if you have read our resolution and you did not relate to it, then I truly envy you. My fellow delegates, in a minute, you are going to be asked to vote in our resolution. While doing so, I would like you to keep in mind that this vote is not concerning MV1 community, but it's about your own and your beloved one's mental health. It's about helping the Amandas of our world while we still can. Moreover, it's about whether you want to start sharing a better tomorrow. On top of that, this is the last committee and the last session of our respected president. So let's make sure it passes as thank you for her input in EYP. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this emotional speech. However, whether the resolution passes or not has nothing to do with the fact that it's the last one of the day. So I ask you all to not take that into consideration, but really just vote on the resolution based on its own merits and on the defense by the proposing committee. So first, we are having the votes on the aims. So read over the aims again of the resolution. And the vote is now open. So we're going to leave it open for around 1 minute. So I see that we have 55 completions. Let's give it another 10 seconds. 63, 65. So we're cutting it off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I can't actually close the vote because Poly bugs sometimes, as you've probably noticed, but I'm now going to look at the results and this will be the final result. 70 votes in. And with 59 votes in favor, 10 votes against, and 3 abstentions, the aim of the resolution has passed. Congratulations. So now think about the policy proposals themselves, and I am going to send in the vote. Okay, so we're almost at the 70 votes, only 5 more people. And in the meantime, I'm going to start closing the vote. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think we're just missing the last person. I'm sorry. And we are very happy to share that due only to the merits of the resolution and not it being due to it being the last debate, the resolution from the Committee on Envy 1 has passed with 55 votes in favor, 11 votes against, and 3 abstentions. Please unmute yourselves and clap for the proposing committee. And congratulations to all of you for this first GA with the new format. So we hope that you enjoyed it. We really enjoyed listening to all of your proposals, all of your constructive remarks. And now we're going to have a bit of a longer break. And we're starting with closing ceremony at 5 p.m. So in 24 minutes, unless there are any announcements from the media team or from the organizing team. So we will reconvene back here at 5 p.m. for the closing ceremony. So prepare your tissues and see you there.